Awesome. This is another edition of a hallway hangout focused on 6.2 performance improvements. It's February 13th, 2023, which is weird to say. I'm joined with this lovely crew of folks. We'll do a quick round of intros before diving into the content. But just as a reminder, hallway hangouts are meant to be casual and collaborative. So if you have something you want to say, feel free to say it. You're welcome to message me or share in the chat. You're also just welcome to listen, turn your video off, go get a snack, do whatever you want to do. These are really meant to be replicating, kind of running into people in the hallway at like a WordCamp. So just want to set that tone because I know sometimes people get nervous in these or don't want to speak up or don't want to share. So please share. I know it's welcomed. To start, let's just do some very quick intros. I don't like to spend too much time here on these, but it is good to know who's in the room. I'll kick it off and then we can do a popcorn style if people can pick the next person. So I'm Anne McCarthy. I used to pronounce she, they. I am living in Seattle and I am one of the 6.2 core editor triage leads. I'm a sponsored contributor from Automatic, where I am a product wrangler and I run the full sighting outreach program, which swirls around a lot of this stuff. So a lot of block theme authors, end users, agencies care a lot about performance concerns, and that's part of why I'm here and organizing these. I'm gonna selfishly pass it off to Felix.
Hey, I'm Felix. I'm working as a senior engineer at Google and have been contributing to WordPress core for several years, and mostly at this point in the performance team, which I'm currently the team rep, one of the two team reps of, and just less than a month now, I've been the performance lead for 6.2, exciting new role, which I'm sure we're going to talk more about now. I'm going to pass it on to Joe.
Hello, Joe McGill. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, in the United States of America. I'm working primarily in the performance team, sponsored from 10up, in a new role that I've been in for about 4 weeks now, starting my 5th week. So, and have been getting up to speed with all the great things the performance team has been doing, and happy to help push forward a lot of that work. And I will pass it to Johnny.
Hi, I'm Johnny Harris. I'm a WordPress core contributor from London, England. I've been contributing for about 9 years. I'm also part of the performance team. I'm currently on holiday at the moment, but as of March 1st, I'll be full-time contributing to the performance project. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. I forgot to pass it on to somebody else. I'm going to pass it on to Thierry.
Hi, everyone. I'm Thierry, based in Switzerland, engineering manager at Google, and I mostly care about user experience on the web, and in WordPress particularly, working alongside many of the people here today, mostly focused on WordPress performance, and super keen to hear what everyone has to say. And I'll pass it on to Andre.
Hello. Also from Europe. My name is Andre, based in Spain. I'm sponsored by Automatic and spend most of my time in the editor Gutenberg project. And lately, I've been doing a bit of performance as well. So that's me. And I think Mukesh is next.
Thanks, Andre. Hello, I am Mukesh Panchal from India. I work for the 10up as a senior web developer, and I am the 6.2 release team code triad lead. Thank you.
Awesome. And thank you for doing the at here ping. That always helps. I really appreciate it. I know someone always has that power. So to start, Felix, we were talking about doing some high level, you put together some great notes and kind of talking about what the performance lead role is. In case you didn't know, we previously had another hallway hangout talking about performance and block themes. And in that discussion, the idea of a performance lead came up. We presented it for the 6.2 release, and that is now in place, which is really exciting. And so part of that is carving a path, which Felix has very kindly offered to do. So just to kind of kick things off, I'd love to hear what the role has been like thus far and kind of what your focuses are and kind of before digging into what it actually looks like.
Yeah, I'm going to share kind of what I've been doing and what I've been thinking about. Of course, this is like a very open, like there's no clear, wasn't a clear definition before, right? And that's what we're trying to do now, shaping that role. So I'm also curious to hear your thoughts on what to add to this. Anyway, so I took some notes in advance for myself. So I think there's like going about some very high level responsibilities for the performance lead. From my perspective, it's basically keeping track of performance related tickets, prioritizing certain performance enhancements based on how beneficial they appear to be, for example. The other big part is catching performance regression. So also a lot of items that don't seem to matter much for performance. They may introduce a performance regression, and that's, I mean, I guess pretty much any issue could regression. So it's crucial that we monitor performance. And then also as a whole, to keep track of the overall performance, the load time performance of WordPress core for the current release, to see how at a high level, how we're doing, whether we're improving or not. And more specifically, what I have been doing in these last few weeks is focusing a lot on the tickets that have the performance keyword on track. That's one part, because those were obviously related to performance, but then also related to the more, I guess, maybe more about the potential regression part. I've been looking at certain other tickets that are a high priority for the release, in terms of whether they are good in terms of performance, like that they don't introduce a regression, and doing that essentially in parts doing it proactively, but in other parts also replying to requests for like, hey, can somebody take a look at this for performance? That's the other way to do it. It's something I've been doing. And then what I've just started last week is kind of conduct an overall performance analysis for WordPress. I did that, I think just exactly a week ago, the first time. And I think in this overall performance analysis, there's definitely still a lot to improve in terms of kind of what to cover, like how can we best assess overall performance. Important pointer here that Andre already pointed out in a recent blog post of his is, I think, or no, it was actually on the hallway Hangout comment. I think he pointed that out. Yeah, that we need to look at server-side performance and client-side performance, and I think just naturally it's a bit simpler to measure server-side performance, because there is like that you can just make a curl request and get the data, which is it involves a little more to get client-side data, and also client-side data tends to vary more between different requests, so it's harder to get exact assessments. But let's talk about that a little more later. But so that's the things that I've been doing so far. And I think something that I already thought about what this role should entail in the future. I also want to just to acknowledge that the time, it's only been like less than a month now that I've been in this role. So I think there's a lot more for this role to expand once it gets to like a full let's say the full 6.3 cycle has a performance lead. Then I think that role can also cover a few more things. For example, one idea was to do general profiling to kind of proactively identify bottlenecks. That's also something that's possible, but it's not something I've done so far. That's kind of what I wanted to summarize. And just a quick, I don't want to go too much into detail for 6.2 right now, unless you want to hear more about it, but things are overall looking very good in terms of performance, which is great. There's lots of improvements over 6.1 in terms of server response time. And I think, according to the data that Andre, you have in your blog post, which dates way back, like a couple of releases back, it looks like we're not quite at the level that it was like at 5.7 or 5.8, I believe, but we are definitely getting back to on the right path, I guess. Yeah. Here, I think the tables are here. Yeah. So you can see here that there were some 2 major regressions in 2 releases that, yeah, I guess there wasn't enough of a performance focus in those ones. But I think, of course, there were also major features introduced, and features always have some cost associated with them, so we have to acknowledge that as well. But I think, yeah, we're definitely getting into a better shape. And yeah, for what it's worth, yeah, performance measurement is hard, and different metrics show up with different results. I think for yeah, but I think here especially we can tell that yeah, especially for block themes, this release has been a major win for performance.
Just on 5.9, the 2 ones that have regressions, there was performance improvements did go into them, so that number might have been worse if those performance improvements didn't go in. So just because it's a lower number doesn't mean that number wouldn't have been 30% instead of 17% if we hadn't done the work that we've done. So don't always get disheartened by those numbers.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, because I do think there's a 5.9 performance post that I think I wrote that I was about to pull up, because I do know that was a focus, and that was brought up for these releases as well.
Also, if you look at the numbers, the difference are sometimes less than 1 millisecond. So it's difficult to have a lot of trust, you know, when you see a lot of green is good, but then you look at and it's only 1 millisecond of difference, and you know you need a different experiment to really measure that level of variance. Like what I'm saying is that changes that are 2 digits changes, like in this release we have for block themes, I'm pretty confident that it is a real improvement. But then when you look at 1-2 milliseconds differences, we need to investigate further. So, and that's been a conversation that I've been having with Felix and others through many GitHub and track tickets. That we lack a really a mechanism, a process to extract good numbers through the evolution of a release is holding us back, because we saw that like in past week, right? That we were looking at this track ticket, and we had different numbers for the same thing, and so it's been frustrating for me really to find something that you can trust and people can replicate and say, well, we have this and that's on. Well, it is not yet solved.
Yeah,
there are so many variables when it comes to profiling pages, because so my laptop broke and I switched to my old Linux laptop, and the numbers I was getting were drastically different, like 50 milliseconds different. And I was like, how is it different? It's just because my local environment under Linux was running faster because it wasn't having to do virtualizations and stuff. So like, I think it's to be expected that when different people run different profiles on their local machines, that they will have different numbers. If they are very drastically different, then we do need to look into them. But yeah, it's very difficult to replicate because you have no idea how you're running that, what version of PHP you're running, MySQL versions, what you've got running in the background. All these things can be massive factors on profiling stuff. But if we're all seeing the graphs go down, that's what we want to be seeing. I think the biggest takeaway I've got from that data, and it's replicated because I've been running my own profiles, but I haven't shared them yet, is we've done amazing work in 6.2 release for block-based themes. In the table that Felix showed there, we were seeing like 30 to 35% improvements. Like that's mega. That really is impressive, and everyone who's involved in that should really pat themselves on the back. It's amazing. It's still, those numbers aren't comparable to classic themes, which is still something I really want to continue to push hard. I want classic themes are block themes are awesome, and I think they are the future of WordPress, but I don't want that to come in, it be, at the moment, I think it's what, 2 or 3 times slower, which is a very noticeable change. It is going to be difficult to try and keep the same level of performance from a classic theme, because a block-based theme is doing more stuff. It's more configurable. The server's just doing more stuff to generate that page. I personally worry that it will never be exactly the same. You're getting a little bit of a trade-off configurability, but I still think there's more we can do. But I think 30-35% improvements, that's just absolutely mega, and will have a noticeable effect on the community and the project.
Yeah, I want to add that the while the block themes have a slower server response time, it is of course in parts because of the configurability that is way higher, but also based on how block themes work, they enable us to do a lot more for client-side performance than classic themes can. And I don't know how, I haven't yet measured how much that offsets the certain negative server-side impact, but at least in principle, there is a lot of room for block themes to kind of make up for this on the client side. Or if you look at the average block theme, how much CSS it loads, and you compare that to the average classic theme, that's a massive difference. Like this regular old school style CSS approach is just loading so much wasteful CSS, and that's not a big problem anymore with block themes. So that's just one example.
Yeah, I wanted to come back to one of the things Felix mentioned and interaction, which is how do we find major regressions, or which are the important things that we can track. And I've been trying to run the same analysis, only focused on different cycles. And I just share in the channel my in-progress work to analyze how the 6.2 cycle evolved. And my goal was to identify major regressions done by a single commit. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any. It seems that what happens is that, over time, we add little things, or, so commits that worsen a little bit the performance, right? And what I saw is that there is one major thing that really impacted the release, which is the caching the global settings. That PR is mostly responsible for the bulk of the improvements of the release. And then there is another one, which is about, so this is for the settings. Let me share the links. And this is for the custom template data, which also is impactful. But so finding which commit into improved performance was easy to, but the other way around is not. So yeah, I'm not sure how to better do this, because it seems like it's not like we've done something really wrong and we could have done differently. It's like over time we introduce little things that on the whole contribute to the worsening the performance. So having something like this, but automated, obviously, and also for the client side and so on, should help us to make better decisions, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm really excited to have this automated performance testing project going on for core, which will hopefully help us with that. But this is a great showcase of, it would be nice if there was always a single thing that brought major performance regressions or fixes, but in reality, it's the addition of all the little things, which I think is also something that I've been trying to highlight, when you measure performance or when you benchmark performance for a single PR, and it brings a 1% improvement or 2% improvement, there is a chance that there is pushback by other developers, this is so little, it doesn't matter, but it does, right? That's something I've been trying to get across also, that like even little enhancement like this, they add up over time, and I think that's what we have to be working on.
Are there any concerns with the fact that the regressions are being caused by like little, add up over time, but then the improvements is like one fell swoop? Like that just kind of is interesting to me. It's like kind of like what you're saying. Should we be prioritizing like also little performance improvements along the way to balance that out? Or it just feels kind of odd to me that it's flipped like that. I don't know what's normal.
Just to give you an idea, I'm meant to be on holiday right now, but I'm a WordPress nerd and I'm still doing this stuff. And last night I was running some profiles to generate a spreadsheet similar to this, and found like 7 or 8 like random 1 or 2 line changes in Gutenberg that could, as you say, like 0.5%, 1% here. All of them took me within half an hour to generate these PRs. I generated 7 PRs in like 45 minutes. And it's all just silly little tweaks to code to just mean that less code is running. So for example, there were lots of places where instead of passing a post object, the post ID was being passed. Now, when you if you pass the post object in, you've already got the object and it doesn't need to do anything. If you pass the ID in, it needs to instantiate a WP post object, it needs to call the cache, and like we call get post hundreds of thousands of times in when you load WordPress, but each time has an impact. These tiny little changes, like it's death by 1,000 cuts. And I think it's okay that we can do a lightning round and merge like 7 or 8 these 1 or 2 line changes. Like when you develop this stuff, it's not always evident that passing an ID in could have a negative impact. We have to, one of my goals I want to do going forward is like limiting the number of times we call get post and get option, because those always have even a couple of milliseconds are added to every single time you call those functions. So it's okay for, we can't nitpick every single commit that goes in, because it will stop development and stuff. But if we can go like, a lot of these things are really easy to find, especially when they're in like these recursive loops. Like I was seeing thousands of these calls that I was shaving off 350 calls to get posts, and that has a noticeable effect. And it also helps when if it's a function that's being called lots and lots of times on the page, the more posts you have on the page, the worse that it starts to compound those sort of performance regressions. So I don't want to stop innovation and stuff happening by trying to nitpick every single commit that goes in. It's okay if we sit here as a performance team and we, after the fact, once everything's merged and everything's settled down, then we do our audit and our review, and then we can iterate that way.
Yeah, also in the topic of so for example, if I think of systems such as the WP query, for example, subsystem, I would be surprised if we can find there an improvement of 2 digits, right? Because it's a system that is sold, that's been tested, that's been improving over many years and so on. So over there, you will find there like little tweaks you can use, and mainly on the things that Johnny shared, which is like how people use that, right? However, in systems that are newer, like for example the theme JSON or even the templates system, I believe that there are some things that we can improve that are big. So I mean, this is just my instinct. I haven't worked really with a templates mechanism, but for example, for the theme JSON, like the caching the settings. In retrospect, that's such an obvious thought, right? Yeah, but you have to bear in mind that at the beginning, that function was only used once. It was only used to generate the style sheet for the global styles. That was it. So it didn't really make sense to cache. However, people started using that for other things, like for every time you render a block, now it's called because reasons. So now it's called like 90 times in a single request. Well, that that takes a performance hit. So my point, I guess, is that you don't always anticipate how the code that you write is going to be used. So is it going to be newer systems that have the bigger spaces for improvement, and the other ones like little tweaks you can do here and there?
I think it's safe to say, based on all those valid comments, is that it's impossible for us as humans to always proactively find performance regressions, which makes this like automated performance testing so valuable. Yeah, and I'm really happy to see that it has been in Gutenberg for a while, and I like to see that those updates there, that now there's TTFB and also even now as LCP measurements in there. And yeah, I'm really excited to get that set up for WordPress core as well, so that we can keep monitoring things, and when there is a notable regression in the commit, then we'll immediately be able to spot it and dive into that, where that comes from.
I think we could do a better job with like developer documentation around trying to educate people that these things can be called hundreds of times, and calling get options or get posts does have an overhead, and that you should have performance in mind, and there are more performant ways of doing that. I think I'm going to try and personally write more blog posts and tweets and stuff about how to write performant code from the get-go, and try and publicize that, even if it's just pushing developers to use Query Monitor, a free plugin, the creator of which is in this call right now. Thanks for writing that, John. There are other plugins and other tools available, but just pushing people to have that installed in their local dev environment, that might be the thing that helps them to find these errors and performance regressions.
Would you ever? Oh,
Yeah, go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Johnny, you should totally try and see if you could work with Learn WordPress on some of this stuff, because I'd love to get into like the official, resources there and courses there, because that's incredibly valuable, and we should be baking it into stuff. I know Jonathan Bossinger is kind of taking point on a lot of the developer material, and it'd be great to sync up with him, because I'm sure he knows some of it, probably not the depth that you do, the expertise, but sorry.
Yeah, XWP sponsors one of the docs teams, so I've worked with and a lot of the things we've been doing is we've been documenting all these changes that happen in the releases. I was really proud that we, as the performance team, had I think 7 or 8 blog posts about the various changes that we've done, because it's all very good we do this stuff, but if we don't publicize it and people don't understand these changes and understand, it's like in some cases new parameters to core classes and stuff that you can add performance to it. If we're not publicizing this stuff, it's kind of, if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, like what's the point of what we're doing? So yeah, I think now I'm working full-time on this, I'm going to spend more time trying to publicize what we're doing and try to add more visibility to a lot of these performance tweaks, and make developers understand, if you pass the wrong parameters or don't do things in the correct way, it can have a major effect.
One of the things I've been thinking about with this conversation is that, sorry, Terry.
Okay, I'll go next. No worries.
Is just that I think there is sort of this concept of, small marginal gains over time are going to make an impact. And it certainly is something that we should have an eye on. As we're doing sort of these measurements, and Andre, one of the things that you had mentioned, as you're doing measurements, a lot of times even those percentages are pretty small between commits, and I wonder if standardizing on a different measurement than just like raw percentages would be helpful for us in terms of knowing which of those numbers are statistically significant versus not. right? Because some of those percentages are, within, a certain standard deviation of just what is expected. And it's like, you could run the same test again and it could show up, a portion of a millisecond better than the last time. And it looks like a regression. And we could really like chase our tails a little bit, trying to like constantly stay green, right? So, finding some way of reporting those as, a change of X amount within a certain amount of statistical significance, where we can like really call out the ones that are outside that deviation to the norm, I think will help us identify like actual places where something either changed for the better or for the worse. So that's, one thing that I have in my mind. But I mean, to the point, Johnny, I think that you're making about trying to help educate, I also wonder if there's, if we start to notice consistent code patterns where people are using certain functions in certain ways, or using parameters in certain ways that could be optimized, that can be picked up by some sort of static analysis, that we consider also, working with the PHPCS team and Juliet and those folks to help like really reinforce those best practices in sniffs and stuff that we can help provide, because we don't have to then chase down and fix things if they're getting called out in our PHPCS checks.
Yeah, I actually, this is, well, just echoing what you just said last, Joe. I'm wondering if there isn't more we can do at the developer tools level, WPCS or other sniffs, or whatever tools most developers, especially core developers, are using to really help them, surfacing when they're doing something wrong. To maybe the point of introducing more doing it wrong, but at least at at the tooling level, maybe there's more we can do.
I can't wait until we have an automated suite that we can run in a repeatable way. But one thing I'm worried about is, so like changing from different laptops, I set up different test data, and I set up my local install to be UK English. And then I noticed that the performance was massively different. Like, my worry is that if you run the automated suite against the same test data against it, you're not going to spot errors. So like the second, even just changing the number of posts per page, for example, if instead of being 10, it becomes 30, I started to notice performance regressions, because I was like, oh, now that's been called 30 times instead of 10 times. And then it wasn't a problem when it was 10, and now it's 30. And you have different PHP versions, you have different language options. Like, there's so many different versions. Like, I kind of love the fact that the three coming up with the same numbers. I don't want an automated suite to kind of dampen our desire to run our own profiles and do our own investigations, because once it's like an automated thing that maybe runs in CI, it becomes like somebody else's problem and no one else is looking at it. Like, I want us all to be able to be running these profiles and be discovering stuff, and I don't want like different analysis, different tools can help find stuff.
I think there's definitely some if everybody can run that on their own machine, that's definitely helpful. But I also think that it's important for us to think about which environments we want to run this in, and we have to basically come up with a few sample environments, probably maybe one with a lot of content, one with like just the basic setup of WordPress with little content, and then maybe one site that one is requesting a single URL, single post URL, another is requesting like the homepage archive or something, and then another example that you mentioned is one is set up without any language pack, the other one is in some other locale and has language translation installed and things like that, right? Like, but we have to. I think we need to start small, and we can expand the data set what we test against. But we also have to keep in mind that we will never be able to cover the real world, right? Like, so it's always going to be a lab test. It's always going to be limited. The most important thing is that we test against consistent environments, and between yeah, between all of us running our tests, we will always get different numbers. But what I at least from, I mean, we have been like on that regression ticket, we've been talking with Andre with our different testing methodologies. At the end, where we are right now, we have pretty much the same percentages, like, or similar percentages, not the same, but like similar percentages. And I think that's promising. And to what, Joe, what you said earlier, I think we can work towards figuring out like how can we keep variance to a minimum, right? Like, do we need to make 5 requests, 20 requests, 1,000 requests? Like this is one of the discussions we've had. But even with like, no matter how good we make this, how good we make this, there will always be some variance, and we just have to be mindful of that when we assess the data. Like if there is like a 0.03% regression somewhere in some commit, we're not going to be like alert and have to fix this, right? Like it might just be, it could be nothing.
Just to your what you said, Johnny, I think that it's important to differentiate consistency and the variance coverage, right? The fact that you did all your testing probably increased the variance coverage because you maybe did it in a different way or different settings, but the setup is inconsistent in the sense that you didn't use the same setup. And with automated testing, I think it's important to have this consistency in the setup. And then, of course, we shouldn't just rely on one set of configuration forever, right? We should definitely continue doing it manually to increase this variance, variance between the settings and stuff like this. But it's super important to have consistency. Otherwise, the results, we can't compare apple with apple, right? So of course, we all have to start small and build upon it and have as much coverage as possible.
Yeah, agreed. One thing I want to focus on going forward is doing some profiling with different languages. I just looked at the stats, and only 42% of WordPress sites are running US English. So that means over 60% of sites, around 60% of sites are not running English. And I have noticed there is a quite a big performance regression on non-English sites. I think that's a problem because I think the majority of developers are developing in American English. As a Brit, I don't even bother changing it because I can read American English. I don't bother to change it, and it only when I bothered to change it to UK English, I noticed it because I just for a change I just changed it into UK English. So I think we all need to have these. We all need to be running different variants and different content types and stuff so we can catch this stuff. And I'm very keen to look into it. Is there any low-hanging fruit on translated strings? Because it's a massive system that kind of scares me to look into because it's such a massive system that is so important to WordPress. But it on any given page it can be like 3,000 translatable strings. If we can shave milliseconds off of these function calls, then it can really mount up.
I think that's a great point. I mean, Joe, we've been working on that, kind of coming up with environments to test, and I think this different locale is another important consideration for that, for sure. I just want to highlight, for what it's worth, in 6.1, that one major regression we found was actually the opposite, where I think there was a language locale handling improvement, but it was only tested with another locale, and it caused a regression only when you were using no locale, like ENUS. So it was actually, it can also the opposite can also happen. So I think it's definitely important that we test both of those.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been working on recently is just setting up some sort of a consistent like profiling toolbox that uses like a real like code level profiler. XHProf is the one that I'm using, just for the purpose of being able to like take an audit of these systems and see where we can identify like priority bottlenecks. Because like you mentioned, Johnny, like there's like so many different systems that work together in WordPress, when somebody makes a request, that, if we just start, like poking into each one, separately, we don't know that activity is going to have, kind of the impact that we wanted to have. So trying to do some, high level profiling of the whole system in a couple different configurations to figure out, okay, where is the most potential for us to make an impact by like really focusing on, let's say, the get text, in the translation subsystem during a release, or, that sort of thing, I think will help us also to avoid the problem of consistently just like always looking for these small little changes, and we're spending a lot of time and making a very little impact, even though, those changes do add up. It'll give us probably a little bit more of a sense of like, where's the best, priority opportunities, I guess. At least that's what I'm hoping.
I've been using Blackfire for a lot of my profiling. I actually had a meeting with. It's an amazing tool, but it also has like CI integration, so we could run performance tests in CI, and it can give you like a checkbox for that. When speaking to Blackfire, they were very interested in supporting this effort, and they were willing to give free accounts to anyone that has them. So if anyone on this call is interested in getting an account, just ping me afterwards, and I'll see what I can do for you.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, we last year at the CloudFest hackathon, there was the platform message, and of course these are the Blackfire people, and we did like a mini project, and they were super keen to participate. So I think there's definitely value into aligning on how we're doing testing, and especially, if we collaborate on a testing environment, we can write these test cases. And instead of everyone reinventing the wheel, at least we have a list of all the test cases that we build over time. That will be super valuable. Joe, any reason you're using something else than Blackfire? Did you find any limitations?
Yeah, I mean, so XAceProf is the open source library that all of those other sort of tools like Blackfire and Tideways and others are iterations off of. So it's the same sort of like basic underlying structure. One of the things that I was thinking as a consideration is, just as we want to allow lots of folks in the community to be able to make use of these tools, that using an open source base that has the ability for us to then have a bit of an interface that could be used to send that profiling data to other services like a Blackfire or whatever, if necessary, would be at least a good starting point, so that for the broad community who wants to be able to profile what is my plugin doing, or what is my what's happening with my specific website, we're at least making available the sort of tooling that exists, that just like really we've used it in WordPress core for specific instances in the past, but like just aren't as popular in our community for whatever reason. So trying to make those a little more visible and a little easier to use.
Yeah, I think it makes sense that to go with an open source tool, because it's also fairly established. I'm curious whether there would be major benefits to using Blackfire over this, like from a functionality perspective. And of course, whoever has a Blackfire account, they can also use Blackfire. But I think just because it's open source, there's less of a barrier to using it. And of course, it would be great if we can figure out something with the Blackfire team to have some community sort of account access, maybe. But I'm not sure that's feasible. Especially when it comes to like thousands of people. So I think probably the open source tool is then the only way for wide access.
The last time we discussed about that, they were keen on sponsoring for an account for core, but of course, if we plan then to make it available maybe not available, but usable for plugin and themes developers, then they would have to buy the their own license. So yeah, no kind of open-ended community license, at least not as part of the discussion.
At the very least, I need to write a blog post on how I set up locally. So I'm using the WordPress core Docker environment, and I've made some modifications to run it. It isn't that difficult to run. It's copying some files around and stuff. Joe, I'd also love to know how you set up your profiler and to be able to replicate that as well. It goes back to what we were saying about the documentation process. Like a lot of the tickets I opened on GitHub, it's like, how do you test this without running a profiler against it? It's like, well, I'm not making any functional changes. Well, that's by design because I don't want it to change anything. So how do you test it other than just loading it and making sure that there's no fire coming out of your website? Like the only way to really test these things is to run profilers against it. And when, again, getting back to consistency, we need to be able to consistently profile this stuff, and new developers that want to contribute in should be, there should be a documentation page that says, look, this is how you run the profiler. This is the one we recommend. There's obviously other ones. You can use Backfire, whatever you want. But, I know of that tool, but I'd love for there to be blog posts to tell me how to do it, or, even if it's a Git gist or something, just to say that run these commands or whatever, that'd be awesome.
I wanted to see if, I think we have maybe 10 minutes or something if we do the hour. I wanted to move a little bit onto the client-side measurement because we're heavily discussing Blackfire profiling and everything. But I think I'm also curious to hear more on how Gutenberg now measures LCP, for example, and kind of see how can we leverage a similar mechanism in core. What have been, I guess I'm mostly asking Andre, like what have been your experiences now with how reliable do you feel the LCP measurement is right now in terms of variance? And yeah, I'm curious to focus more on the client side aspect now as well.
Yeah, see, that measure has landed a few days ago, so there are not many numbers yet. So, but if I compare, like in Code Health, if I compare like time to first byte, which has landed 2-3 weeks ago, if I compare that number with others that we track in the editors, I see it is a lot more stable. Like, for example, if you click on time to first byte classic, for example, if you click over there, yeah, this one is good. It's mostly, you don't see a lot of variance. There's still some, but it's still useful. So if you do the same, but with some of the metrics you track for the editors, like typing or inserter or whatever, yeah, that one, for example, you see a lot more variance, right? So despite this variance, in the editor, we've been able to find regressions, major ones. So I'm hoping that because of the front-end metrics have less variance, we'll also be able to find regressions when they come. So, for example, the example that I share in the Hangout post as a comment, like what we do for inspecting the post and only ship the CSS of the blocks in use. I wish we had this metric in place for when that PR landed, because hopefully we would have seen the impact that would have. So I'm hoping that over time we can find those kind of things just for having these metrics. So far, there's not a lot of data, but they are be more stable than the others, so that's promising. But also we need to be mindful of the data at the moment we use for this. Like, for example, the tests use the homepage template and without many content really. So we need to make sure that the template we are tracking uses like big images, for example, so we can catch regressions on those things. Otherwise, you just tracking, you have the survivor bias. You only see what you measure, but the other things that are important, yeah, you don't see. So it's still early ages, but yeah, I'm optimistic that they can be useful. I don't know if that answers your question, Felix, but yeah, just to so about how we do it is like, well, there's the PR there, but just we inspect the performance metrics provided by the browser in the end-to-end tests. So that's how we do it. So
how many yeah, that makes sense. Thanks. But how many requests do you currently do a median of several?
Yeah, is at the moment I think is 16. Yeah, it's 16 because I wanted to track both the median, but also the percentile. In the code health, we also we only show the median, but if you go to any of the recent PRs that were shipped, well, actually any PR in Gutenberg that is recent, and you go to the performance jobs, you'll see both are being tracked. I did that because I wanted to know if there was less or more variability in one or the other, but so far there's no real difference. So I think we just can go with the median and just a number of 16 or 20, and that could be fine. I don't think the variability between the metrics in the editor and the metrics in the front end is due to the number of times. I think it's different. It's like in the editor you have a lot of more things going on. You have listeners everywhere, and so when you do something, there is other things that react. So it's more difficult to have consistency. But in the front end, you just load a page and that's it. So I think that's the key, not the number of times that we run the metric.
Yeah, yeah. Although I guess, but to some degree, I would think that there is still an impact, right? Or I mean, I would still think that like making 10 requests gives us better numbers than making one request, right? But like at some point, it doesn't matter anymore. It seemed that analysis that we were talking about, you had made, I think you had been using 1,000 requests, which is a lot. Or is that?
Yeah, yeah. So what I was so frustrated about that. So what I did was 1,000, but also I did it in several days. Like I would use sets of 100 automated using cold, and then in the afternoon I would do another set of and then the day after I would do the same, just to make sure that my computer wasn't doing weird things, right? Yeah, I don't think we need 1,000, to be honest. I was trying to limit the variance, but I still don't know what is the sweet spot.
Yeah. I'm also, I mean, I almost wonder when you say you did it over a longer time, I almost wonder if it, like I've usually tried to do the opposite. Like if I test 6.1 and then I test 6.2, I want to do it as fast as possible so that hopefully my machine doesn't go bonkers at some point, and then the test result for one is very different than the other. But like,
yeah.
But yeah, it's like from the latest numbers, when I tried doing the 1,000 requests and then I did the same with 20 requests, the numbers were pretty much the same. So it seems that 20 is already some reasonable number. So the 16 you mentioned, probably similar. It's just that I guess the more it's also one thing that I also want to highlight. It's that we have been previously trying, and I think in 6.1, when I checked analysis there, I was relying on web page tests to make requests to a real URL. That always comes with way more variance because it is an external site request. And I think so. One thing that I wanted to share here, and I think we've mostly been doing that recently anyway, but using a local site for these lab metrics is way more reliable.
Yeah, it is. Actually, you see in the CI numbers, like I presume most of the variance there is because the PR runs at different times. Like, in the CI jobs, one is work time for the US, they have a lot of more things to do, so they are more congested, they have more load, so that variance shows up. If you do the same PR but in the morning, you have different numbers. So that's the the difficult thing about the CI. So that's why I also want to do it locally if if it is easy. So.
One thing about your measurement for LCP, I don't know if have you heard about this Web Vitals library?
Oh yeah, I checked this one.
Because that's what I mean. That's what is supposed to be very close to like how actual core Web Vitals are measured. I'm not sure. Maybe like it's apparently very lightweight, so you could consider if you want to use it directly. But I think at a minimum, it may be useful to kind of compare how exactly that library measures LCP and cross-check with your approach. Maybe it's already the same, but I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I checked this, and there were some things that this library does that I don't like. For example, the LCP for if you have iframes, you have to be mindful of checking. I don't remember the details, but there was something about iframes that was important. But however, because we only are checking the homepage and there's no really iframes or whatever, that didn't matter to me. So I just went for the minimal, test that we could do, and I checked this, but didn't really compare the numbers using both approaches. But yeah, that could be useful, especially as we grow and we add more tests, right, or more metrics. Like I think this library also tells you about the lighthouse metrics, or there is another one. So yeah, as you are more metrics, you just can go with a library like this that provides
Sure. I mostly wanted to share it, even if we don't use it, for just wanted to make sure that our approach is relatively similar in how they measure it.
I know we're at the hour mark. Are folks good with wrapping up? Would we like to continue discussing stuff? I feel like there's so much we could just spend hours talking about, but I also want to be cognizant of time. How do people feel? Are we good with wrapping?
I do need to go.
Yeah, let's wrap up.
Same.
This was really lovely. I will post notes and edit the post where I announce this and include the video as well. I might ping some of you for some follow-up or just rewatch the video to make sure I captured some stuff correctly. But this is really helpful, and I think it'd be good to continue to run these as we need to, because there are so many interesting voices and backgrounds I think are good to include in these improvements. So thank you all so much for joining, and expect some notes. See you in Slack.
Thank you for organizing. Bye-bye.
Thank you.